Hi everyone, this is Amber from Dolls of Amber, and today I'm back with a new video. In this week's video, I'm gonna do another celebrity doll for my main Pop Girly series, and it's none other than Melanie Martinez. I'm making a doll of her Portal's persona, specifically her look from the Void music video. If you've been following me long enough, you'd know that I've already made a Melanie doll before. I made my first one back in 2023 when the album came out, and I even brought her along with me for the Portals concert. She did feel a little outdated to me, and I always wanted to recreate her. I made a really hard decision to sell her away even though she was so sentimental to me, but I knew that I was going to be able to make a better doll of her in this day, since I am more skilled now and I've adapted a lot of new techniques. Anyway, enough rambling, let's go ahead and start working on her. For my base doll, I'm going to be using this Barbie Dream Bestie Malibu head that I've previously customized but then cancelled. I just wasn't happy with the face sculpt, no matter how hard I try to make it work. So I stopped working on her and decided I'll just use her on this project instead. For her body, I'm using the Shadow High one. This is from Victoria, I guess, Victoria Storm. And this was gifted to me by one of my friends, so I really wanted to use it for a project. First of all, I'm just removing the previous face up on this Malibu head with some acetone. But now we're on to the downfall. We're so early in the video and there's already problems. You'll see it in a minute. But basically, I wanted to cinch her waist. Since it worked so well on my Lady Dimitrescu custom, I really wanted to try it again for this rainbow high body. I was so confident that it was gonna go really well, but failed to realize that maybe, just maybe, rainbow high and monster high bodies aren't made with the same material. So I left the body in for 5 minutes, just like how I did it for my Abby body. And when I took her out and removed her felt and elastic, I realized that I just gave her scoliosis. I really don't know what happened. I guess the material on the body reacted differently, but usually it should work well with Barbie or Monster High. I wasn't giving up though, I still wanted to work on this body, so I made the decision to cut her up and reconstruct her again to give her back her normal posture. This took a while, and I heavily relied on my Dremel. If I didn't have this tool, I wouldn't be able to do body modifications like this, so I'm really glad that I invested in one. Her neck is a little crooked, so I decided to cut it up as well. Rainbow high necks are really thick, so I decided to sand it down. Decided to do this because the Barbie head didn't look right with the thicker neck. But once that is done, it's time to reattach all of the parts together. For the neck, I'm just using some super glue. And for her bottom half and torso, I'm gonna fill the insides with hot glue and place an armature wire inside to act as a spine to be able to connect with the torso. I've learned this technique from other creators. This specifically I got from Hexian whenever he cinches his doll's body, and then he just fills in the waist with some epoxy clay, which I will do as well. Before I use epoxy clay though, I'm gonna fill in the insides with air dry clay. This is cold porcelain clay. It's lighter than epoxy and it's also pretty flexible, and it is much more cheaper, but it's not meant to replace epoxy, just so you guys know. It's not really good for body modifications. It's good for filling in and then you go on top of it with epoxy clay. But that's all there is. You can also use it to make little accessories if you want. But yeah, for this, we're just gonna use it as a filler. Her legs did get affected by the boiling water, so it got really loose, unfortunately. I felt very ambitious, so I decided to cut it up as well. I wanted to see if I could work on a different kind of articulation for her legs. I really wanted to experiment with body mods, so this was a really good opportunity for me to do so. In this part, I'm trying to remove the actual joint, the mechanism that allows the legs to move. I then sanded it down and widened the area, and then I drilled a hole so I can add an aluminum wire in between. To secure it in place, I just added some super glue, and then I mixed up some 2-part epoxy clay to cover the holes that were made from the drill. I also started building up some epoxy clay on her crotch area. I'm gonna leave an opening for the string. I also started filling up her other parts with epoxy clay, starting with her waist, and then I gave her boobs. Always remember that water is your best friend whenever you're working with epoxy or air dry clay. It helps a lot in smoothing out the clay and helping it blend better into the plastic, so make sure to always have it handy with you. I just kept on building it up until I'm happy with the shape. In this part, I'm just covering up the neck as well, and again, I just kept on blending. I let the epoxy clay dry overnight, and the next day once they were all cured, I sanded them down off camera to make them smooth, and now it's time to paint them. I'm gonna spray paint them first with some white primer, just making sure that every part of the gray epoxy is covered. I've let it dry thoroughly, and now it's time to paint the body. I just mixed up the skin color for Melanie. I've watered it down, and now I'm gonna paint it on the body in thin layers. I also used pan pastels to add coverage. Basically, I did 2 layers of paint and then a 3rd layer with pan pastels. I find that with pan pastels, it smoothens out the paint job and covers up any brush strokes you might have left with the paint. I also took this moment to do some body blushing. I love doing this part because it gives dimension to the doll's body. I used a lot of reds, oranges, and pinks for her. I found that adding a lot of varying colors, it just adds more depth and detail, which I really love a lot. Once that is all done, I sprayed the body with Bosnia Flat Clear to seal it, and now I'm using some Liquitex matte varnish mixed with some pearlescent powders, and I'm just gonna brush this on the whole body. This will help protect the new skin color and at the same time add some shimmer into it, since I did mix up the mica powder with the varnish. I sprayed it with another layer of Bosnia Flat Clear as a final layer, let that dry for 24 hours, and now I'm gonna try to string the legs into the body just to see how it all fits. As you can see, I've also added some felt on the socket. This is just to tighten the joint, because when I first tested it out, it felt a little too loose, so I was hoping that this will help tighten it. And of course, it didn't work. I honestly don't know what I'm doing wrong, but after stringing it, it just wasn't working well for me. It was still a bit too loose, and I wasn't happy with it. I can try to twist the legs. In that way, it can tighten the elastic, but it still didn't look right to me. The legs just wouldn't position correctly. So I think I'm gonna have to order another rainbow high body for this custom. While we wait for the new body to arrive in the mail, I'm gonna go ahead and start working on her head. I don't have the right color for her hair. I'm gonna attempt to blend it instead. I'm using these 3 colors. I got them all from Shopee from a Chinese seller, but this is the same milk silk hair that you can get from AliExpress. This is nylon hair, by the way. I don't know why they label it as milk silk. Before blending, I did wet the hair first, and I just combed it out, and then I'm just gonna stack the colors together, and I'm just gonna brush the hair. This is usually how I do it. I'm gonna fold the hair into itself, and then I'm gonna brush it again. And I'm just gonna repeat this step over and over again until all of the colors are blended into one. I don't know why, but I added in a pink, but I don't think it added anything to the final color. Once done, we can finally start on the rerooting. As you can see, I've already painted her sculpt the same color. And as usual, we're gonna do the knot method for this reroot. To do that, just grab a piece of hair, loop it on your finger, pull it tightly against your finger, pick it up with your rerooting tool and pull. This will create a knot on the needle, and now just plug it into the head. Now I just need to do this 1,000 more times till her head is all filled. I've split my reroot into 3 days. I didn't want to do this in one sitting. I think I dedicated about 3 to 4 hours in those 3 days to work on this reroot. Once done, this is what it looks like. I really like the color, and I think it's pretty close to Melanie's hair color in the music video. Now I need to glue in the hair. Since I did the knot method, I can actually skip this part, but I want the hair to be permanently in there, so I added glue. I'm just using Uhu glue for this, and I'm using a Q-tip to spread it around inside. Now we can do some face mods. I first trimmed down her ears since they were protruding too much, and with an aluminum wire, I'm just gonna thread that into the head. This will be our base for her ears. Once I have the wires in place, I'm gonna go ahead and fill the whole head with aluminum foil and air dry clay. I'm just doing this to harden the head. I learned this method from Hextian. Since the head is originally really squishy, any face mods with epoxy clay will crack once squished. So to prevent that from happening, we need the head to be really hard. There are also other methods in keeping the face mods intact. My friend Charlie B. Dollies actually made a video for this. Her method is really cool and I really want to try it out soon. I was just really lazy when I was working on this doll, but make sure to check out her video to see how she does it. And this part, I'm just shaping up the ears using air dry clay. I'm just gonna leave that to dry for a couple of hours. Once it is dried, I'm gonna add more detail. I have a reference of Melanie's mask on the side so I can copy it, but it's not going to be 100% accurate, just so you guys know. Since this is miniature, I'm not going to be able to capture all of the details. A lot of it is going to be simplified, just to make it easier for me. I'm gonna leave the ears to dry and I'll work on it later, but now I'm gonna start working on her face. I'm gonna build up her cheeks to make it protrude more. I did lightly sand her face a bit. This will help the epoxy stick more. The slightly rough texture gives the epoxy something to grab onto, which will make it easier for me to work on. I also added some epoxy on her nose bridge just to flatten it a bit. This was a couple hours later. I let the air dry clay and epoxy to dry, and now I'm building it up and adding more detail. As you notice, I did use air dry clay for her ears, but to actually connect and blend the ears into the head, I'm just using epoxy clay since it is much more sturdier than air dry clay. This is what the sculpt is looking like so far. I did another pass off camera to add more details and build up her cheeks. I'm also gonna sand this down and prep her up for the repaint. I sprayed 2 layers of Mr. Super Clear, let it dry for around 20 minutes, and now we can start painting her face. I'm using a base of white paint first, watered it down, and I'm gonna cover her whole face in thin layers. I think I did 2 layers of white. Now I'm gonna paint in her skin color. Now just like with the body, I'm gonna use the same pan pastel colors on her face to add more coverage for her skin tone. Now it's time to sketch in her features. I'm just using a mechanical pencil for this, and I'm gonna do my best to draw in the eyes symmetrically. I did need to focus, so I did the whole thing off camera. I'm gonna add some dimension using powders. For under eyes, I'm just using some white, and with some pinks, I'm just giving her a blush. I'm also blushing in her ear. To deepen the shadows, I'm using some oranges and browns. I'm also contouring the bottom of her cheeks, and I'm just lightly brushing that in. I also blushed in her nose. I'm also contouring the sides of her nose. I did it off camera, but I also contoured her eyelids. And lastly, I'm just deepening her blush. Before I seal in all of the powders, I'm gonna go ahead and paint the whites in her eyes. Again, water down your acrylic paints and work in thin layers. Decided that her crease color wasn't dark enough, so I'm adding more. I'm also making sure to blend everything in really well. Off camera, I sprayed her face with another layer of MSC, and I'm just doing some highlighting with my white color pencil. I'm now gonna paint in her pupils. I mixed up a teal color for the base, and I'm just gonna paint that on all 4 eyes. With a lighter blue, I'm just gonna paint that on the bottom part of the pupils. I mixed up a darker green and I'm gonna paint that on the top part of the pupils for some shadow. I already did one eye, but now it's time to do some outlining. I still have problems lining my eyes, but over time I've been more comfortable with it. When I do make a mistake, I just make sure to clean it real fast with a Q-tip. It was pretty time consuming and I needed to focus, so I did it all off camera. Apparently, I also did the lips off camera. I guess I was really into the repaint and I forgot to click on the record button. But I did went in for a maroon color and now I'm just adding in some dimension. To clean up my lines, I'm just using the same skin color paint and I'm just making sure that everything is all clean and crisp. I gave her pupils more dimension by using some black pastel and I'm just brushing that on top of her pupils. With some white, I'm just adding in some lines on the bottom of her pupils. Now I'm just adding in her catch lights. I don't know why this whole part is blurring out. I think my phone camera is trying to focus on my hand again. This is so freaking annoying. It happens every time I paint a doll face. Now I'm just finishing it up by adding in more details. Off camera, I sprayed her face with the final layer of MSC and I let that dry thoroughly. Now it's time to add some gloss on her face. For her eyes, I'm using Liquitex matte varnish. I'm not sure why, but this dries satin for me. And I'm mixing in some mica powder. This is pearlescent, and I'm just gonna add this on her eyelids. I mixed up some blue mica powder with the matte varnish as well, and I'm just adding that in her eyes. For her lips, I'm using some pink mica powder, and I'm just adding the varnish on top of everything. And for her lips, I'm using the high gloss varnish. Here is Melanie. I just removed her hair cover and I'm gonna give her a boil wash after this. And like I said earlier in the video, I'm not happy with how loose her legs are and the only solution I could think of is just replace it and start over again. Well, today I did get my replacement. I found this violet for really cheap. She was only around 500 pesos, which is $10. I said I wasn't gonna do a lot of modification on her, but I ended up giving her a chest joint. I didn't film the process of doing this because I wasn't really sure if it was gonna go well, but basically I separated the torso from the bottom half. I then drilled some holes and added an aluminum wire. This is gonna be held through an elastic just like the legs for the first body. I'll make sure to go in depth with this on another project soon, so make sure to look out for that. I ended up sanding and painting the body off camera. I didn't want to show this to you guys again since I've already done it for the first body. In this part, I'm just attempting to cut her hair. I've already boil washed it. Now I'm just sectioning it and figuring out how much hair I want for her bangs. I cut it below her chin and then I cut even more to give her micro bangs. I then proceeded to give her hime bangs and then some layers. Once done, I wrapped her bangs in cling wrap, then I let that dry for a couple of hours. Next up is her jewelry. Oh, and by the way, she's on her new body now. I wasn't able to showcase it, but it's now painted and also stringed. Going back, I used a needle to poke a hole in her ear, and I'm just gonna attach a ring on it. I did this for 4 of her lobes, and for the rest I just glued them on. This is it after. I did get some new nail charms in the mail, so off camera I did replace some of the earrings. Okay, we're almost done. I just need to make her outfit. I was able to find a reference of the dress she wore on the music video. I'll be using this black lace for the top part, and I'm gonna hem the top of it first. I gave it a sweetheart neckline by gathering the middle, and I'm gonna give it some darts to help it fit the doll better. This is it after. Now I'm gonna make the skirt part. I have this fur lying around that I can use for her dress. I also used it for the bottom part of her bodice. I'm gonna be layering different fabrics for her skirt. One of them is the fur, but I also want to use this green lace for it. I'm just cutting some strips like this to copy the actual dress visually. I'm just doing the same thing for the fur. I also have this cream lace that I added in, and I'm just layering them together, and now I'm just sewing them in place to keep them from shifting and moving around. Now I'm just connecting the top to the skirt. Off camera, I attached some arm sleeves, also sewed in some snap buttons for the closure. I'm gonna give her some shoulder straps. I'm using this frilly elastic, glue and fold it in the middle, and then I'll sew it on the dress. I wasn't able to show it to you guys, but I made her some heart nipples. I'm just gluing them on the dress directly. Now I'm just adding in the little nipple piercings. I did use silver studs for this, but off camera I did replace it with gold since it's originally gold in the music video. For her shoes, I'm using some discarded rainbow high shoes. Again, I'm using these pumps from Heather Grayson. I've used these shoes so much now, they're just so good. I'm adding air dry clay on the heel part. I'm gonna turn them into wedges. Chola's shoes are flats and they look like sheep or goat hooves. I'm gonna try to get the shoes to look close as possible but not really as accurate. Let it dry for a couple of hours and then I painted them black. With the same green lace, I'm just gonna glue it on the shoes. I was using Uhu glue for this. It was a bit messy so I did everything off camera. I'm just showing you a little part of that here. I also painted this off camera, I'm really sorry. I added a lot of shadows and highlights. After it dried, I just put it on her and tied it on her legs and she's all done. And with that, I think it's time to see her glamour shots. If you made it this far into the video, thank you so much for watching. Also a disclaimer, I should have mentioned this before starting the video. I just want to address that I am aware of Melanie's issues. I'm in no way supporting Melanie and this doesn't benefit her at all. I do understand that some people will feel disappointed. In my perspective, I'm more of a fan of the art than the artist. Also, I made this doll because I want to see how I've improved by comparing it to the first one I've made in 2023. I've been doing remakes of my older dolls. You can see that on some of my videos here. I made a zombie Gaga doll, and I'm planning to make another Chapel Roan doll in the future since I made one before. So please make sure to look out for that. I will respect any opinion that will be thrown on this video, but please do keep it civil. Any vile comments will be removed. Anyway, if you like this video, make sure to comment your thoughts down below. If you also have any suggestions, feel free to let me know. If you want to see more from me, I'll leave my other social medias in the description box. Again, this is Amber from Dolls of Amber. Thank you so much for watching. Bye bye.